Hello! So there's a new poll for RuneScape, the old school feature poll, Artisan skill. So, why am I in-game, you might be asking? Because we've got our first in-game poll. So, at most banks and popular places, you find these poll booths. You will get a message in your chat box if there's a poll running, and if you haven't seen that, then this flag should be flying, and probably the edge of the table should just be animated slightly. So when you click on the use poll booth, it loads it, takes a second to load, and you can see the results of the poll straight away. This new poll system also can provide links and images. So if you say, for example here, click read the Artisan devlog, you click that, it will load up your default browser and take you to the devlog. You can refresh it to see the updates, and you can click history to view the older polls. For example, this is the previous content poll 23, and there are all the results. The green ones are the ones that passed, and the ones that aren't green didn't pass. For example, should they add marks of grace to all other agility courses? So you have to close that down. So let's go ahead and vote in this poll. So the first question is, would you like to add the Artisan skill as described in the Artisan skill dev blog? Click here for my video on that. I really don't want them to add this. I mean, a lot of the skill has been improved, but really I don't feel it's old school. Question 2. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they introduce level 20 tree called the Ash Tree? I don't really see any point in it if they're not adding Artisan. Question 3. If we don't want Artisan skill as a whole, should they introduce a level 50 tree called the Elm Tree? Again, I don't see any reason to add it since we're not having the skill. Question 4. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they introduce a level 85 tree called the Redwood Tree? I don't really see any point in adding this new tree. Question 5. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they introduce a level 60 quartz ore? I don't really see any point in adding that if we're not having the skill. Question 6. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they introduce a level 80 hunter creature called the Great Kayak? I don't really see any point in having that, so I'm going to vote no. Question 7. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they introduce a level 85 hunter creature called the Wolverine? I don't really see any point in adding this again, so I'm going to vote no. Question 8. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they add fish fillets as described in the dev blog to the cooking skill? I don't really feel that this is something old school, so I'm going to vote no. Question 9. If you don't want Artisan skill as a whole, should they add carvings as described in the dev blog to the crafting skill? I really don't think they should add those. They didn't really seem like anything that old school should have. Question 10. If you don't want Artisan skill as a whole, should they add Artisan tools as described in the dev blog to the crafting skill? I'm going to vote no, because really, if you're not having Artisan skill, you shouldn't be having Artisan tools. I mean, maybe wieldable tools for certain levels, but to be honest, if you want to wield a rune axe, then get your attack up to 40. I know there's skillers out there, but you chose to be a skiller, don't complain about it. Question 11. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they add totems as described in the dev blog to the fire making and crafting skill? I don't really like the totem idea, so I'm going to vote no. Question 12. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they add the two-handed crossbows as described in the dev blog to the fletching skill? I'm going to vote no. Whoops, that was a yes for a second there. I'm going to vote no. Really, I don't see this two-handed crossbow in-game, and I can't really like it. Question 13. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they add slow burners as described in the dev blog to the fire making and herb loss skill? I really do like that idea. It's a bit of a money sink for coal and fire making, but it might be overpowered, I don't know. But you know what, I'm actually going to vote yes on that one. Question 14. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they add combining runes as described in the dev blog to the rune crafting skill? I'm going to vote no. It really would devalue a lot of runes. I know that it would take a lot of pure essence to create those runes, but it really would devalue the runes. Question 15. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they add construction shortcuts as described in the dev blog to the construction skill? Now, I'm actually quite a big fan of this whole construction shortcut idea. I'm going to vote yes. Hope that they really decide to develop this idea and show us a dev blog about it, and then poll it first. Question 16. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they add quartz figurines as described in the dev blog to the crafting and construction skill? Despite the fact I really like the idea of not being able to use the resources sometimes, I'm going to vote no, simply for the fact that I don't see it that good as old school. And finally, question 17. If you don't want the Artisan skill as a whole, should they add clothing and farming additions as described in the dev blog to the farming and crafting skill? I'm going to vote no. I do like the idea of having more things to farm and therefore make clothes, but really I can't see it being in old school at the moment. So I'm going to vote here. So submit vote, and it said thank you for voting. So let's have a look at the current results. So far we've had 6,211 votes. 53.4% of those votes want the Artisan skill as described in the dev blog. 61.1% want the level 20 ash tree to be added to the game if Artisan doesn't pass. 65.6% want the elm tree to be added to the game if Artisan doesn't pass. 70.6% want the redwood tree to be added to the game if Artisan doesn't pass. 65.6% want the quartz ore to be added to the game if Artisan doesn't pass. 66% want a level 80 creature, the Great Kayak, if Artisan doesn't pass. 67% want the level 85 Wolverine Hunter creature if Artisan doesn't pass. 56.5% want fish fillets to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. 58.6% want carvings to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. 58.8% want Artisan tools to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. 57.5% want totems to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. 60.7% want two-handed crossbows to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. 61% want slow bonus to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. 60.9% want combining runes to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. 66.2% want the construction shortcuts to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. 57% want quartz figurines to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. And finally, 65.8% want the clothing from the farming and crafting to be added if Artisan doesn't pass. So, a lot of these aren't passing. In fact, I don't think any of them are meeting the benchmark to pass. The redwood tree is the highest at 70.6%. So it really doesn't look that good for Artisan and many of the items that Artisan involves. Let's have a look if anyone else has voted recently. So we've had a couple of hundred more votes, just under 100. If you haven't voted in this poll yet, make sure you go down into RuneScape, go to your nearest bank and go to a poll booth, vote in it. If you can't get on RuneScape, then go to the old school website. You can vote the same way as you used to. You can see the votes the same way as you used to. And you can always have your say, seeing as this is a community game. So it doesn't look that good for Artisan, probably won't be added in game, and many of the things that Artisan brings won't be added. Hopefully the next player design content will actually pass and we can have something really cool in game. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a like and comment. If you want to keep up to date with old school from me, please subscribe. I've been Lewis, thanks for watching, goodbye.